Hello and welcome to my best mage and triangle strategy video. In this video we're going to be analyzing all of the mages, excluding Time Child because he's not really known for dealing damage. We're just looking at mages that deal damage. So let's just first confirm we got everyone, make sure we're not missing anyone. There should be just 6. So these are units that deal magic damage as their main function. I would say it's fair that all of these do that. Okay, so the first thing we'll do is we'll go over the base stats. But first we'll start the match so that we can just cycle just through these units. Excuse me. Okay, so for the criteria, I have 7, just like with the archer video. We have, can they manage their own TP? Do they need a battery? And are they self-sufficient? What is their effective range? How much damage can they deal? Do they have utility? Do they have shutdown? How well can they fit into a team comp? Do they have any it factors? Okay, so those are the 7 criteria. I made it 7, so it's unlikely that we get a tie. So to begin, let's go over the base stats. So what stats do mages care about? Generally, accuracy is not one of them because magic is, like in general, 100% accurate. So they care about magical attack, movement to some degree, not so much jump, but getting them on high ground can be nice. I would say the main stats are magic, speed, and movement, and the rest is like a bonus. The reason movement is important is so that they can reposition, but magic attack is great because that increases their damage. Speed allows them to go faster. So those are the main things they care about. What they also want is some durability, so like having good physical and magical defense and health is nice. But the main, if you're using mages correctly and they're not exposed to enemy fire, or they can only get hit by like a single enemy and can tank it, you generally want the biggest damage and the highest speed. So that's really what we care about. Okay, so Narv, 57 magic attack. He does have a magic amulet, which I believe is +2. So he really just has 55. And he has 25 speed. He has a speed amulet as well. So he has like kind of like slightly above like lowest speed, and his magic is decent. Next we have Azana. She does have a magic bracelet and a speed bracelet, so she also has 25 speed because speed bracelet is +3, so she would be at 25 base. And then she has a magic bracelet, which is +3 magic, so she has 59 magic otherwise, so a little bit higher than Narv. Next we have Decimal. So he actually has the obsidian anklet, which gives him +5 magic. So he should be at 48. And then for speed, he doesn't have any speed increases, so you can just see his 25 speed. He does have decent defenses, so that is a point in his favor. So he's a little bit more durable than some of these mages. Giovanna, you can see here, she has 54 base magic, 24 speed. She has like the lowest speed of the mages. This does work against her, but she is quite durable with almost 500 health and the best defensive stats like of all the mages. She does have a different way of functioning though. She needs to be on mostly flat ground and cast things in a line. So she also needs to be on the right tiles, but she's more durable than the other mages. Frederica, she does have a magic bracelet, so she really just has 62 magic, which is still really high. And then she has a speed bracelet, so she also just has 25 speed. So most mages have around like 60-ish magic and 25 speed. And then with Corentin, he also has 25 speed, and you can see here he has a magic bracelet, so he has 59 magic attack. So that's really, oh yeah, and then he also has 5 move. So let's go back and look at everyone's move. I did forget to mention Azana, Decimal, 4 move. Giovanna, 7 move. Very good movement. And 3 jump, which helps her climb. And then Frederica, 4 move, 2 jump, and then Corentin, 5 move. So the best movers are Giovanna and Corentin. That's not a strategy, or not a strategy. That's not a one of the criteria that's important, but those are their base stats. So Giovanna is the tankiest. Decimal is the second tankiest. I believe Narv. Looks like Narv is the third. Yeah, so Narv is the third tankiest for like physical and magic, and then the rest are kind of like tied. So most of them have around 25 speed. Most of them have 4 move. The only exceptions are Corentin's 5 move, Giovanna's 7. Most have 2 climb. The only exception is Giovanna's 3. And that's it for base stats. All right, so now let's go over the first thing. So this is point 1 of 7. Can they manage their own TP? This is huge. All right, so for Frederica, she can to some degree with her ability, her passive on her weapon, KO TP plus. If she kills an enemy, she gets 1 TP back. So she can to some degree manage her own TP. If you use her optimally and she's last hitting at least 1 enemy, she'll get 1 TP back. Now, if she kills multiple enemies, she still just gets 1 TP. So keep that in mind, but at least she has some tool that allows her to manage her TP. That's important. So she has something, okay? Some of these have none, so just keep that in mind. Corinton has TP on ice. If he is standing on an ice tile, which is very easy to set up, you can just throw down a ranged ice stone and get 5 ice tiles for free for no TP. He gets an extra TP every turn. So he has extremely strong TP management. He doesn't need a battery, but if you run one with him, he's even more absurd. But he does not need a battery. He's completely self-sufficient. He has 3 spells that cost 2 TP. He can make a wall of ice, he can single target spike and a 90% chance to silence, and he can AoE, then hit up to 5 targets. Very good unit. All right. Next we have Narv. He has no TP maintenance at all. He cannot generate his own TP in any way, shape, or form, and all of his abilities cost 2, and then one of them costs 4. Like all of his basic costs 2, and then his weapon skill costs 4. So he has no TP management at all. Azana, same thing, no TP management. She does have passives that reduce the cost of Rite of Rain and Rite of Tempest to 1, but I would argue wasting a turn and casting these, and also spending 1 TP, and then casting a 2 TP spell in general is less efficient than just nuking something. Because what she wants to do is she wants to create like Rite of Rain and then start nuking with increased damage, which is fine, but she still doesn't have she doesn't have maintenance. In fact, she needs to burn through more TP to deal increased damage. And her damage is better, like she has the highest lightning damage single target in a rainstorm, so it can be good. But just note you have to waste extra TP in an extra turn just to be able to see the biggest value from her. Her 60% paralyze is good, but she doesn't have TP management at all. For Decimal, all of Decimal's abilities are at minimum 2, and then you have to use what you can hit. So like if you're going to be spamming target height plus 5+, you're going to be spamming a 4 TP ability. So all of Decimal's abilities are expensive. Decimal cannot recharge TP from a basic turn passing and has to actually not move and wait to get 3 TP back. So I don't know that I would call this good, because like here's the thing. Let's say you do this. You cast a spell. Let's say you cast like a 2 TP spell. You deal some damage to random targets, great. And then it's your next turn, and then you wait, and now you're back to, let's say you were at 2 TP, hit 0. All right, now you're back to 3. So you spent 2 turns casting 1 spell and getting 3 TP back. And you also had to wait in position and cannot move. Now, if he were just a normal mage, it would be his turn, he'd get a TP, he'd cast. It'd be his turn, he'd get another TP, and he could cast another spell. So I don't really see the value in Decimal, to be honest. Like the charge TP thing kind of sucks. So as far as managing his own TP, I guess we'll say he has some kind of ability. He loses passive regen though, so it's like debatable. But at least he has theoretically an ability to manage it. All right, and then finally we have trekking for TP with Giovanna. She has to move 5 or more squares, and she gets 1 TP. Now, one thing to keep in mind with her is that all of her good spells are at least 3 TP. And Ivy Beam, even though it is a really good spell, and I actually personally like it a lot, because it's like, this is, like, if she could just use this without being on, like, if there were just more conditions for her tiles she could be on, it would be great. But because there's, like, not always grass and wheat field, you're like, if you want to run her in general, she's going to be spamming probably Gelid Barrage and then using Gaia's Roar as needed for Spike. But trekking for TP is nice and it does help her, but all of her good spells are 3 TP, so she needs to really go out of her way to like build this TP up. And whereas Corinton can just stand in a position, she has to be moving around, so you have to account for that, and she needs to be on the right tile. So she can manage her own TP, but her basic spells that are remotely good cost at least 3. And Ivy Beam is good, but it's extremely unlikely that you'll have a map that you can use it on. I would say like 20 to 30% of maps have grass and wheat field. So yeah, it's not the best. But yeah, so even though she does manage it, she has a hard time with her TP because all of her spells are expensive. Okay, so for best unit for managing TP, the best unit, it definitely goes to Corinton. Why does it go to Corinton? Because he only needs 2 TP to do a bunch of different things. He also has 2 3 TP options and a 4 TP. But every turn he can do one of 3 things. So every turn you can make a decision with him. That's huge. For free. He's the only unit that effortlessly manages TP. This definitely goes to him. For second place, I would say like Frederica and Giovanna are like probably tied. Because killing things and then running around a lot and spamming 3 TP abilities and also being on the right tiles is probably about as consistent as like last hitting things. Maybe not. Maybe last hitting is a little bit more consistent. But I would say it's like pretty close. They're like closely tied. And then for next place for self-sustainability, I would say it goes to Decimal. And then Narv and Azana for worst maintenance. They have no abilities to help them manage TP at all. They have no self-sufficiency. They can have a lot of dead turns if they're not being batteried. So that's very annoying. All right. So now we've gone over that. Let's go over what is their effective range. So a lot of people might want to give this to Decimal because he has the furthest effective range. Or Giovanna because Gaia's Roar can be the furthest. But what I'm looking for this is who can consistently hit where you want to with a spell at range. And it's very simple. Gaia's Roar, does Gaia's Roar have the best effective range? Yes, but not on every map. So it's not always the most like furthest reaching spell. On maps with a lot of elevation changes, its range is terrible. On maps that are flat, its range is insane. So yes, so objectively, Giovanna has the highest effective range because she can hit the furthest out of any ability, but she needs to be on a flat map. And then Decimal has like the second highest effective range because he has a range of 1 to 10. And then if we look at like Corinton and Glacial Moon, a range of 0 to 6, and it also can reach 2 tiles out from that, so a range of 8. So like if we're just going for raw range, it's Giovanna. But like this is like an exception. This is not every map. This is not every turn she's going to be doing this. We're talking about like average range. I would say probably goes to Decimal because his spells just at 1 to 10 out. I think that's fair because his average range is all of his spells are 1 to 10. So you just have to target the right thing. He's going to hit a bunch of things. And then for this ability, I guess this has no range restriction. So he can just straight up nuke things at any range with TP or target HP 7. But all his other things are 1 to 10. So I'd say for range it goes to Decimal. I think that's fair. All right, how much damage can they deal? So this is going to be looking at AoE because single target, even if like Azana has like good single target spike and Narv has good single target spike, like the big damage is going to be coming from like Glacial Moon, Sunfall, Gaia's Roar, target HP 7. So for what we're looking for is best average damage, and honestly, I want to say that goes to Corinton because of Glacial Moon spam. So like let's go over each unit really quick. All right, so for average damage, right? So the problem with Frederica is that she doesn't like Sunfall is good, but it has like the charge. So you can battery her and then like get her to 5 TP and then have her cast and then turn accelerate her to get Sunfall off, and it does huge damage. But the setup, it's more complicated and the setup is annoying. Whereas like with Corinton, you also have to consider this too. If I'm batterying a unit, if Corinton is on ice, all right, let's say Corinton is at 5 TP, right? And this is important for Glacial Moon spam, and I'm going to make a video on Glacial Moon spam in a little bit. All right, 5 TP, and he's on an ice tile. He casts Glacial Moon. He is at 1 TP. Let's say Julio or Medina uses a battery. He just gets hit by 1 TP of battery. It is his turn again. Natural TP regen, 3 TP. Standing on ice TP regen, 4 TP. He can Glacial Moon twice in a row. And even if he can't Glacial Moon twice in a row, he can Glacial Moon. So he's at 5 TP, Glacial Moon, puts him at 1 TP. He's standing on ice. It's his turn. He gets 2 TP back. He's at 3. And then he can Icy Tomb, which hits even harder than Glacial Moon, and it has a good enough range that if enemies are near him, he'll spike all of them, assuming all the icy tiles are still intact, which is usually the case unless you melt them. So he can Glacial Moon Icy Tomb combo more consistently and more easily than Frederica can get off a single Sunfall, because it takes 2 turns for her to do this. So if you just turn Accelerate Corinton, he can Glacial Moon Icy Tomb combo without a battery from 5 TP, as long as he's on ice. Which he will be if you Glacial Moon on himself. Like, if he just gets hit by one of the tiles. Like, he won't take damage, you'll just put Ice Tile on him. So from 0 setup, if he has 5 TP, just Glacial Moon and Icy Tomb nearby enemies for massive damage. And then also, if he is on ice, it'll you can do it at range, or Glacial Moon twice with a battery. And also consider that with Sunfall, you can move and then cast it, but then once she gets turn accelerated, she can't move after she finishes casting it. So that's another thing too. So it's like a flexibility thing. He has 5 move. He can move around in between casting Glacial Moon twice. She has 4 move. She can't move once she casts Sunfall, because it literally just forces your turn to end. So it does deal good damage, and it like deals compressed damage, but if you turn accelerate and Glacial Moon twice, it's literally more damage, I believe. Was that 290 times 2? What would that be? Like 5... My mental math is terrible right now. 580? I think that's right. So yeah, it is more damage. But yeah, so that's just better. That's more consistent. For Narv, his damage is not even close to either of those two. Same thing with Azana. The AoE is just not there. The only argument you could make is Wind, but like, let's look at the damage of Wind. It's not even close. And it's like close range, so I don't think so. Same thing with her. Decimal, sometimes he can deal consistent damage, depending on the randomness of enemy health, but it's not very reliable, and he doesn't have the maintenance for it, and he needs batteried. He needs hard batteried. Like, he does not regenerate any TP at all. So like Corinton and Frederica, if Frederica's killing things, she's like managing her own TP plus natural regen. Corinton on ice is just 2 TP a turn for free. The damage just can't go to Decimal. He's too wildly inconsistent. If there's 5 or 6 enemies balled up, but Corinton and Frederica can for sure hit all of them consistently. Decimal cannot do this. He cannot get the highest damage. Can he deal higher damage in those units in a single turn? Possibly. But it's completely random and out of your control. So I would not give a unit that functions in this way the highest damage. Same thing with Giovanna. Can she hit 10 enemies lined up with Gaia's Roar and deal huge damage? Sure. But this is going to be extremely hard to pull off, and on most maps you're not going to be able to do this. So for consistency and damage, it goes to Corinton. Glacial Moon is the most consistent damage-dealing spell in the game, period. It is the most flexible. It's just the best. Honestly, I think this is like the best spell in the game, because it creates ice tiles, which reduce enemy move by 1, reduce all physical damage-dealing accuracy, which allows your like tank, like your Eridor or your Flanagan, to be a little bit more tanky because enemies might miss more. And it just has huge range. It's very controllable. It has plus or minus 10 height, so it can hit enemies on like weird, like enemies that are staggered on heights. Whereas like some of these units, like Giovanna, like staggered height screws up her thing. Different health screws up Decimal's thing. It's just it's the easiest spell to use in the game, and on a unit that generates 2 TP a turn with minimal effort, like just giving him an extra diamond or 2 each turn, he can consistently spam this. So pretty insane, but it definitely goes to Corinton. And then for second most consistent damage, I would say Sunfall is probably the next best thing, because it, like, just look at the damage here. It's almost as damaging as 2 Glacial Moons. It's like slightly less damage. So and the range, the effect is the same. And you can cast it for cheaper and have it deal less damage, but you'd want to cast it at 5 TP. So I would say it's 1 and then 2. Because the rest, like Sunfall, same thing, plus or minus 10 height, very consistent, big range, up to 8. It can hit up to 8 tiles out. hits up to, what is it, like 12 enemies total or something, I think. Let me count the tiles really quick. Let's see. Yeah, here's the range of it. Yeah, that's 12. Or no. No. That's 13 tiles? Is my math correct here? Yeah, because 9 in the middle and then 4 on the outside, so 13 tiles. But look at the range on this thing. This is insane. And the thing, another way you can use Sunfall is if you just have Eridor and he just like King Shields for a turn, and then Frederica can just stand there because you know the enemies aren't going to move because they're King Shielded and they're forced to hit him if they're all melee. So like that's another thing. You can shut them down with like Endless Speech and then use this without a turn accelerator because they'll all be asleep assuming you don't hit them with anything else. So there are other ways to use Sunfall that are good, but it's so consistent. Like the height thing, you can see here, it's like flexible. It doesn't care about like plus or minus 10 height. So enemies that are like staggered on like buildings and roofs and stuff, it can still hit them. But yeah, it's just really good. But Corinton's is a little bit better because it's just you just use it and it just does it. It's on demand, huge AOE at range. Like you can't beat it. Okay, so for damage, I would say it goes to Corinton. Yeah. I was looking at the Archer one for a second. I got like tripped up. Okay. So let me type these out so I remember this. All right. So self-sufficiency, Corinton, range, decimal, damage. So this is consistent damage, Corinton. All right. Do they have utility? This is point number 4. Do they have utility? So let's go over that. So what is utility? So I made a previous video where I talk about damage, utility, shutdown, and healing. These are categories that I didn't really come up with these. I'm just like using them to describe like class roles. But damage is dealing damage. Utility is making your team more effective, whether that be damage mitigation or buffs. Shutdown is making the enemy team less effective, whether it be crowd control or debuffs. And then healing is just restoring. So damage is removing health. Healing is replacing health. So taking away health and then giving health. So that's like the 4 categories, and pretty much everything falls into that. So for utility, utility is making your team more effective. So let's start with Frederica. What does Frederica do that makes her team more effective? One thing she can do is Flame Shield. Raises fire resistance and causes an enemy to take like chip fire damage. So if an enemy smacks one of your units and they're flame shielded, they'll take some chip damage on an automatic counterattack for up to 2 turns. This is pretty good. She can also put Fire Eater on something to allow them to absorb fire, which causes the fire damage to be returned as health. So if your units are standing on fire tiles, they're getting hit by fire magic, they'll get healed instead of damaged. So for utility, Frederica actually has a little bit. She doesn't have a ton, but she has some. And then for shutdown, she has... Oh, I'm sorry, this is just the utility. There's a shutdown section. Okay, so she has some utility. We'll put it that way. All right, Corinton, utility. He does have some. He has Icy, or not Icy 2. He has Shield of Ice, which allows him to put 1 hit of invincibility on any single unit. And it doesn't end until that unit is hit, and it also counterattacks for some chip damage. And it also counterattacks ranged like archers. So if an archer shoots, they'll take like 20 or 30 chip damage, ice damage on response, and then the unit you put this on takes no damage. So that's pretty good utility. 1 hit of invincibility on a damage mage, that's pretty good. All right, Narv. Narv has Whirlwind to flip enemies around. This makes your team more effective by allowing them to crit. He has Sanctuary to heal, and it's also a heal that can hit like multiple allies. And he also has Mystic Beam that can heal while damaging, so he can heal allies in a line as well as damage enemies. So if you have enemies and allies in a line, like, you know, alternating or whatever, he can hit all those enemies and heal all those allies. That's pretty good. Azana, she has Rite of Luck, just boosts the luck of all allies. This is not really that useful. She also has a Cursed Strike, which decreases an enemy's luck, also not that useful. And then she has Pierce Defenses, decrease an enemy's magic defense. So this is good. Oh, I forgot to mention, Narv also has this. So they both can debuff enemies' defenses, which effectively increases your team's damage. I would count that as more utility than Shutdown, because Shutdown is like removing enemy effectiveness. So like increasing your team's damage is like utility, I would say. So they both have that. So that's pretty good. But overall, she doesn't have the best utility. All right, Decimal. So raise strength and magic attack of all allies with 0 TP, and that's pretty much it for his utility. It's okay. It's better than nothing, but it's 2 TP, so it's something. All right, and then for Giovanna, she can heal in water, and that's it. That's all she can do for utility, because everything else is just damage. So, all right, so best utility, the absolute best. Probably Narv, because, or no. Healing isn't utility. Healing is healing. Best utility isn't Narv. Definitely not. It's either Corinton or Frederica, I would say. Because Corinton can just straight up put a hit of invincibility on things, which is really good. And then Frederica can put counterattacks and then fire eating. But I would say the hit of invincibility is a little bit better. It's hard to argue, like, for utility, because, like, healing is healing, so I was, like, getting confused there. Like, Sanctuary is a healing spell, so that's, like, a healing ability. But, like, these are offensive mages, so they don't really care to heal. They want to kill things. They want to bring utility. They want to bring shutdown. They want to bring, like, team roles to the table outside of healing. So I would say it probably goes to Corinton again. I'm just going to type this out really quick. Let's put that there. All right. Who has the best shutdown? Frederica has no shutdown at all. Well, I guess she has, like, slight. She can put -1 move for 3 turns with Blazing Chains, which is okay. But she is probably, like, some of the worst. Corinton, Ice Tiles can shut enemies down. Silence, 90% silence is so good at just disabling enemy healers and enemy mages. It just completely removes them from the fight. He can make an ice wall to block enemies off so they can't get to you. His Ice Tiles reduce enemy accuracy and movement. It's probably going to be Corinton, but we'll go through everyone else. 30% chance for Narv to paralyze with Spark. Icy Breath is basically like baby Corinton. So for shutdown, it definitely doesn't go to him. Azana, 60% chance to paralyze with Rite of Lightning is good. She's probably going to be like second in this. For Decimal, he can decrease move, but it's the targeting is inconsistent. He can instant kill, but the targeting is inconsistent. So for like shutdown, he doesn't really have it. Like the decreased move is like okay for like slowing down enemies a little bit. I would say he doesn't get it. And then for shutdown for Giovanna, she has no shutdown. Well, actually, that's not true. Oh, I forgot she has Immobilize. I did my Immobilize video, and I completely forgot she has this. But to be fair, it's so inconsistent that you can almost never use it. Yeah, so to be fair, it's usable in like 20 to 30% of maps. So, yeah, about that. All right. But anyways, for shutdown, I guess she does have Ivy Beam. She can immobilize, which is shutdown, but unfortunately she can't use it consistently, which sucks because if she could, this would make her very competitive, an easy A tier, and potentially S in general. But because she can't spam this, she can't use her best ability almost ever. I would say it goes to Corinton. It's obvious. Like, Wall of Ice by itself is better than almost all of these other things for shutdown. The fact that he can silence 90% and spams ice, it goes to him. It has to, because Frederica doesn't have any. Narv barely has any. Azana has 60% chance single target to paralyze, but 90% chance to silence is way more consistent, plus the Ice Tiles and Ice Wall. And then Decimals is inconsistent, and Giovanna's is inconsistent. So shutdown goes to Corinton. Okay. Point 6. How well do they fit into a team comp? So this is a question of how, like, synergy. How well does this mage fit into any team comp? So that's kind of abstract, so let's, like, elaborate. So can they bring big damage consistently? Can they help your team in a way where they're just not doing one thing? I would say this is like how much do they bring to the table is like an easier way of thinking about this. So Frederica has very low utility shutdown and some damage, so she just brings damage to the table, which is decent if you want it and you need it. Corentin is like a toolkit. He can put a hit of invincibility. He can make ice walls. He can silence. He can spam the board with ice, reducing enemy accuracy and movement. So it's probably going to be him again. This is why I put him at S tier. Narv is like a toolkit in some ways, but it's not as good. He has a heal. He can flip people around. He can ice. But his damage just is like so-so. Like this is the way I describe Narv. This is why I put him at B tier. He is a generalist that has no standout thing aside from Mystic Beam, and even then, it's like it's decent, but it's not the best thing ever. Like even its damage is just not that good. Like I would much rather use Glacial Moon than Mystic Beam because it hits further out and it's more consistent and it hits a ball of enemies. Lining enemies up can be annoying, but Narv has like the basic spell. He has like Scorch, Frederica's baby spell. He has Icy Breath, which is Corentin's basic AoE. He has Spark, which is like a neutered version of Rite of Lightning. It has slightly less damage and it has half the chance to paralyze. So like Narv, yes, he has a little bit of everything, but none of it is standout or good. And compared to other mages who specialize in a thing, he's not as good as them at the thing they specialize in. Azana is a more consistent paralyzer. Corentin is a better ice mage. Frederica is a better fire mage. And then as for wind mage, I don't think we really have one. I guess you could say his wind magic is probably better than Azana's because it can be damage boosted, but hers can be damage boosted as well with Rite of Tempest, so I guess it's kind of like a toss-up. But both of these, both Narv and Azana, for fitting into team comp, I would say Azana, she like has like negative symmetry with things, or synergy. She like hurts a team comp because like if you're trying to be mobile, having Rite of Rain on the board, all the puddles reduce your movement. Rite of Tempest can make your archers inaccurate. Yes, it can combo with Archibald, and he can do fun. So you have like asymmetrical asymmetrical accuracy, where Archibald retains good accuracy and enemy archers lose out because of the Tempest, and he gets damage scaling from that. So there's some combo there. But for just like fitting into a team and just like doing useful shit, it definitely goes to Corentin. Most of these just deal damage. Like Corentin can make ice walls. He can silence things. He can put a hit of invincibility on things. He has the best, most consistent AoE. He can sit with the team and just do whatever you need him to. He can wall enemies off. He can reduce their movement, reduce their accuracy, make a unit tanky. he can do huge AoE spike. It goes to Corentin for fitting into a team comp. So far, we have one more thing left. Do they have any it factors? So it factors are like unique abilities that cause them to stand out. Units with it factors in Magic, I would say, are Corentin, Frederica, Giovanna, and Decimal. You could argue that Rite of Thunderstorms is really good with Time Child, and it is. Like, there's nothing wrong with it. In fact, like you can easily beat the game just by spamming these two abilities. But this is I view this as an exploit. I don't think this was like an intentional thing, and if it was, maybe it's like an oversight. But and even so, like it takes a long time. You just have to keep grinding through like freezing and unfreezing people and waiting for enemies to pass turns. It's not fun to play this way. Is it viable? Sure, but so you could argue Rite of Thunderstorms is an it factor. Even just using it in general, 30% accuracy to deal good damage to random targets is pretty decent. It's kind of like decimal-ish. For it factor, like, so let's define that. What is it factor? It factor is like, it's almost like an intangible, but it's like they bring something to the table that other units can't bring to the table. So in the case of Frederica, it'd be Sunfall damage. In the case of Corentin, it would be all of the different things he can do plus Glacial Moon spam. In the case of Narv, it'd be the flexibility, in theory. In the case of Azana, maybe like the Paralyze spam and like Rite of Thunderstorms. In the case of Decimal, it'd be his range. For just like individually as a unit, for just like raw it factor, like who has like the most interesting thing in general, like I really want to say it's just Glacial Moon because it's just so consistent. Like it's really hard to find an ability that's even close to as good as Glacial Moon because like HP plus HP 7 is super inconsistent. Gaia's Roar, super inconsistent. Needs flat ground. Sunfall needs to be charged for a turn. In terms of just like raw holy shit moments, I guess it's probably like Sunfall because you can just like kill a bunch of things in a single spell. Because like look at that damage, 533 damage plus if she gets increased magic and fire and during during clear weather, so you can get her hitting really high damage and putting like a huge group of enemies at like half health or lower. So I would say It Factor is like the Sunfall ability, to be honest. Now this is per unit, so which unit has the best It Factor? Like honestly, Glacial Moon Spam is so good. I think it just puts Corentin in this category. Because like assuming everyone's getting batteried, Glacial Moon Spam is the most consistent way of damaging enemies as a mage. Because it doesn't suffer from randomness, it doesn't suffer from tiles and tile randomness and height. It doesn't suffer from needing to be charged. This dude, doesn't need to be in a line. Doesn't need Time Child to be good. Like this is just always good. Like Glacial Moon is just always good. So this video is basically just why Corentin is good. The video, but I think Corentin gets It Factor because not only does he have Glacial Moon Spam, but he has all the other things I listed. 90% silence, and this is good early game too. Like some people are like, oh, he sucks early game. It's like on my new game plus, or no, I'm sorry, on my fresh save hard mode, no deaths, no mental mock battles playthrough, I have Corentin, and his silence is so strong for just silencing an enemy mage. It's always relevant. So this notion that he's only good late game, Wall of Ice, always relevant. Early game, Corentin gets Icy Breath, Frosty Fetters, and Wall of Ice very fast. And then once he gets TP on Ice, it's ridiculous. But even without TP on Ice, just with Julio giving him a TP each turn, with Moment of Truth and the cost reduced by 1, you can get this early game if you use your silver on Julio. Corentin he's the most flexible mage early game on a fresh save, and he's the most flexible mage late game on New Game Plus. And he has the most consistent, easy to use, big damage spell that has insane range. So It Factor goes to Corentin. So let's organize these. I'll go over the other units. So like, let's retreat really quick. We'll organize the rest. So like we'll rate them, like best to worst, based on all these criteria. All right, so let's go to unit placement. All right, so we'll start. So this will be first place. All right, so Corentin. He won, in my opinion, he won all of these except for 1 for effective range because Decimal's effective range is higher. All right, so who gets second place? So right now Narv is just sitting there, but we want TP management, effective range, damage, utility shutdown, how well they can fit into a team comp, It Factors. I would say it goes to Frederica. Fitting into a team comp, Sunfall. You're going to be running a Benedict. You're going to be running a Medina. You can turn Accelerate a Sunfall. You're going to be running batteries. The utility and the shutdown aren't really there, but the damage, the range, the KO TP plus 1, the Sunfall damage, It Factor, like that pushes her up. And then for the next mage, I would say it goes to Azana. And this is going to seem weird because she's just like single target lightning character, but if she's just catching a battery, she can just have a 60% chance to paralyze while she's single target nuking. And it does go off enough that it's useful and relevant. And it's like relatively consistent. So she has like shutdown. It's hard for me to place Decimal high because he needs hard batteried. He needs like Julio to just chill next to him the entire match and just give him all the TP he has. So like, yes, he does out damage Azana for sure, for like hitting a bunch of targets, but he needs like a dedicated battery, whereas like Azana just needs to get like a 1 TP every now and then, and she can just consistently lightning things, like just like shock things and have a good chance of shutting them down for 2 turns. So that's something useful. And then for fourth place, I would say if Giovanna was more consistent, she would easily be above Azana too. but she needs like flat ground. She needs the right tiles. I would say it's probably Narv or Decimal. I'd say it's Decimal here for fourth, and then for fifth, I would probably do this. We'll do this. We'll do fifth and sixth. Okay. So why is Giovanna last? Range issues, high ground ruins her kit. Two things right there. The rate she can reach out far, but once there's terrain, it messes it up. If enemies aren't lined up, it messes it up. Narv at least has flexibility and damage, and Decimal's damage and range is good enough that I would say he's a little bit better. But this is my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 for the rankings. Definitely let me know what you think about this, or if you disagree and why. You could argue that Decimal's like AoE damage is a little bit better than Azana's paralyzed. That's fair. I wouldn't really argue with that, but I would say Crinton is the best mage hands down. He has so much to offer in any playthrough, and then Frederica is like an obvious close second to me. Sunfall is really good. You just have to play around it. But yeah, that's it for this video. Definitely like the video and subscribe if you like triangle strategy content. I'm going to be doing this for every class type. So if I use any of these characters in one of these videos, unless like, for example, it's like who's the best healer, and Narv and Hasabara and Giovanna have some healing abilities, I can throw them in there for fun, but they're probably not going to get it, so it's not really worthwhile to do so. But that's it for this video. Thanks for checking this out, and I'll see you in the next one.